self-discharge rate in our profession is ridiculous. And we'd like to do something about it. And if you would, listen up. I'm going to share a few things with you that are very basic. They are not in place. In your practice, you are losing bucket loads of money. You might be throwing more money at marketing when really you're just kind of wasting the lead. So let's look at it. Very first thing we want to be able to do is at the front desk is a shepherd. We want to get an idea that the shepherd is somebody who has their arms around the flock. The flock are your patients. Any active patient, that receptionist needs to know where they are at all times. They are not just an order taker on scheduling. They are controlling the schedule. They sell that person on that schedule. They're closing the patient to be on that schedule. The clinician is closing the patient to come through the care and get well. And they're doing it from the very first day. So the receptionist, again, they are a shepherd. They are building a relationship with every patient. Sometimes a good receptionist will know more than the clinician about what's going on in the patient's life because they have that moment for some degree of small talk. You might go, I don't have that kind of flexibility where I can have a receptionist kind of chatting up all my patients. I understand. I don't mean like they're sitting in the waiting room for 15 minutes and the other person's having a coffee next to them and chatting them up, but just enough of a rapport that they're building with the receptionist that she is a value add to the patient experience. If it's just somebody who intakes you and doesn't value add, even guys that are doing virtual assistants at front desk, and there's like a virtual person, two-dimensional person taking people in, still have guys that actually have great VAs that are doing it, and they do have a personalized experience with every patient, even though you can't quite touch them. So very, very important. Pay attention to that. If you've got a receptionist that gets a little overwhelmed with the admin and everything else and forgets to pay attention to the patient, you could be losing some money. Matter of fact, last week I had a client who told me that he's got this great office manager. And so she sits at the front and kind of sometimes, but oftentimes she's just kind of off to the side. And a patient decided she was never going to come back again because she said the office manager was kind of cold towards her. She's just distracted. She's just doing stuff. She didn't just pop up and go, hey, Mary, glad to see you. Have a seat. You know, she didn't do that. And so this patient decided not to come back. So the rapport at the front desk is infinitely valuable. Next, the therapist. What the therapist does is they have to sell their plan of care from first visit to very last visit. The patient comes in with one goal, and that goal is generally pain relief. You, as a clinician, have to sell full rehabilitation. And it starts in the initial evaluation, and it continues all through their plan of care, all the way from beginning to the end. If we're not selling that, we're in trouble. So I want to go over how you can sell the plan of care with your patients. And again, this is to prevent self-discharge. You finish out with your patient, you do the whole exam, now you need to give them an understanding of what's coming. You don't want to say things like, okay, let's see what we can do to get that shoulder pain under control. Okay, well, you just assigned that as the goal. What I've done in my practice, and I've shared this many times, and I've gone into places over the years that brand new guys, brand new clients, I'll go and do an office visit, and I'll see that they've got the posters on the wall, and they're actually got this into what they say to the patient about the four-phased approach to care. So in the four-phased approach to care is a very simple process, and it's just, you want to create what I like to call maximum nod your head factor. If you're saying something to the patient and they're doing this, they're agreeing. If you're saying something to the patient, they're bopping their head, and then they can't bop their head, they either are no longer agreeing or they don't understand. So you want your four-phased approach to care to be communicated in a way that's really easy to understand, a logical progression that anyone could see. And it's so simple that you'll think you need to make it complicated. Please do not. So when you're seeing your patient for the initial evaluation, you're going over your findings, and then you say, so Bob, I want to share with you our four-phased approach to care. It's our special sauce. It's the reason why we have such great success, is our four-phased approach. It's really reasons the doctors refer to us. So in phase one, which is really where you're at right now, we work on getting the pain and inflammation under control. Just bring it down, get it under control, because again, that's why you're here. As you begin to feel better, we're going to move you into phase two. And in phase two, we're going to work on improving your overall mobility and flexibility, being careful not to aggravate your shoulder pain. Does that make sense to you? Yeah, great. And in phase three, what we're going to be focusing on strength and stability within the shoulder, core, whatever area of the body we're working with. We're going to work on some strength things so you can function in life a little better without that shoulder aggravating. You with me? Yeah, great. And in phase four, we want to actually tax your system just a little bit aerobically. So doing some exercises where we actually kind of wear out your shoulder and you're in between your shoulder blades in that area, kind of getting the strength and endurance up so that, you know, you're working in the garden and other things around the house, that it doesn't aggravate very easily as you get tired. Does that make sense? Yeah, good. So you say that. Now that's planting the seed. Now, how do you take it all the way from beginning beginning to end. Well, you use the same 4 phases all the way through their care from beginning to end. When you're doing something with a patient, regardless of what it is, it doesn't take you 2 seconds to say, Bob, this is a phase 2 treatment here to improve the mobility in your shoulder. That's what we're focusing on now. So that's a good sign we're up into phase 2. We're working on this. So, all right, Bob, so we're going to be a little bit of phase 2 and a little bit of phase 3 here. So we're going to do some mobility stuff. We're going to do some strengthening things as well in phase 3. And what phase are you in, Bob? When Bob comes in the front door, a receptionist wants to know what phase they're in, and all this talk starts going on. And there's posters on the wall. And I don't know, you might be able to find a poster link somewhere, or just reach out and say, you got a poster? I'll send it to you. And, you would have these posters on the wall. You can walk a patient up to it. It's like super simple, but you should be saying it every day. All of your clinicians should be saying it, or whatever you've agreed upon as your 4-phased approach. I can't imagine any physical therapist that wouldn't say pain relief, mobility, strength, and endurance. I mean, maybe there could be a 5th one, but I wouldn't imagine those 4 would be left out. You have those 4 phases, you have it up on the wall, you're sharing it with your patients, you're showing it to them. You might even give them a hard copy. You might even get them to better understand the 4 phases. They're able to go home, they can share with their spouse what the 4 phases are and how they influence things for them with their practice. You could do a lot of different things with that, and hopefully you will. So a 4-phase approach to care would be a fantastic thing. So after you went over with a patient on their initial evaluation what their 4-phase approach to care really is, you want to talk to them about their frequency, how often they should be coming in for care. If you say to the patient that you want them to come 1 to 2 times a week, they're going to come once. If you tell them 2 to 3 times a week, they're going to come twice. So be specific. It's a prescription. Don't take 2 or 3 pills a day. You want it to be specific. My recommendation for everybody, it's such a simple thing. I mean, sometimes you can look at something and go, this is really simple, but the complex and the machinations that people can go through to get it implemented, it could be quite profound. Every patient for the first 3 weeks, 3 times a week, and then wean them down, you'll end up at average patient frequency at 2.0. And you're going 2 times a week? You're kidding me. Yeah. Most practices that I run into when I start working with them are about 1.5, 1.6 average number of visits per patient per week. 1.6. Now that's damn low, if you ask me. Of course, you have patients starting on a Friday or discharging on a Monday, all those things in between. We should be averaging 2.0. Now, how do we get to 2.0? We would just start out asking the patient to come 3 times a week for the first 3 weeks. The weeks they're in, if you can get it in, but definitely week 2 and week 3. If you do that, you're going to begin to wean the patient down and they have less attrition. When you see a patient twice, you schedule twice a week and they come once and they don't make it up, and you have those kinds of things happening, you'll have more patients dump you in phase 1 and they never make it to phase 4. So when they're coming in on a regular basis, several times a week, you can make a lot of fast progress really quickly. It used to be, back when I was a PT early on, everybody came 3 days a week. Everybody did it. It was just what you did. But there wasn't the big copays and deductibles that we have now, but somehow the physical body changed somehow because of the insurance changed. It didn't. Our ability to sell our plan of care did. So we want the patient to come 3 times a week. So we'd say to the patient, Bob, I want you to come 3 times a week for the first 2 weeks, and then we're going to start weaning you down. First 2 weeks would be the following week and the week after that. Then we'll start weaning you down. Great. Then you got to do this thing. You walk the patient up to the front. So you walk the patient up to the front. You say to the receptionist, hey, Patricia, did you get a chance to meet Bob when he came in? Of course I did. Okay, great. So Bob's going to be coming in 3 times a week for the next 2 weeks, for next week and the week after. Is that right, Bob? And you get a verbal yes. It's very important. You get Bob to look at you and say yes, because sometimes the handoff between what you say to the patient and what happens when they go out to the front desk, it's something entirely different. And so we don't want that. We want to have understood at the front desk that the front desk schedules based on the prescription from the therapist. They don't schedule based on what the patient negotiates with her. The therapist walks the patient up to the front and says, this is Bob. Bob's going to come in 3 times a week for the next couple of weeks. Is that right, Bob? Yes. Good. So Patricia's really awesome. She's great at scheduling people. Patients really love her, but she'll rip your face off if you start missing appointments. And Patricia go, no, I'm not. I will. All right. And there, everybody has another laugh. That handoff to the receptionist is very, very important, and it makes a big difference in building that we're a team whole experience for their physical therapy. So every visit, the clinicians want to correlate everything they do based on what phase they're in, like I mentioned. There's a phase 1 technique. When a patient comes in, the receptionist will say, what phase are you in? What phase are you in today, Bob? What phase are you in, Mary? What phase are you in? If the receptionist asks and the patient goes, I don't know, that's a flunk. That's a mistake. So you always want to make sure that is never happening. 4 phases of care, very, very important. We want to prevent discharge, and that's how you do it.